So with that, thank you, Donovan, for being here with us.
Good afternoon, family. How are y'all doing today? Y'all doing all right? I'm very intentional with the word family. I feel like we're communing together. We're sharing the space that makes us family, all right? Can y'all say family with me one time? Family. Yeah, I like that. Awesome. So, thank you, Christina, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, Wake Forest family, for making me feel right at home. My name is Donovan Livingston. Bring you greetings from the big city of Fayetteville, North Carolina, Vietnam, 910. All right, cool. We established that. I normally do this at the end of my presentations and my recitations, but I want to start with this. I want to open with this at the beginning to think about the power of narrative storytelling. So if we could all rise, if you are able to. If you are able to stand and feel comfortable doing so, awesome. Y'all look great today. Y'all look great. Awesome. So if you could raise a fist in the air one time for me and repeat after me. Sharpen your eyes. Tune your ears. So you know what you see. Understand what you hear. Minute by minute. Hour by hour. As we know our story. We know our power. Awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful. Y'all may be seated. Cool. So throughout this afternoon, as I say, when I say, as we know our story, I want you to respond with, we know our power. As we know our story, we know our power. Y'all with me. Y'all going to be just as engaged as I am today. Awesome. So just so you know, spoken word poetry is rooted in hip hop, and it's a mutual exchange between audience and poet. And I very much want you to feel connected to the things that are going on stage, both lyrically and spiritually, emotionally, that sort of thing. So if at any point you feel compelled to laugh, cry, scream, turn to your neighbor and say amen, please do that. You're not going to throw me off or anything. This situation calls for that. And one of the ways you can respond and interact while I'm on stage is through snaps. Can I get some snaps one time? Yes. You sound like a babbling brook. It's wonderful. So at any point, if you hear something you agree with, vibe with, appreciate, really want to send some love in this direction, you could snap. So if you're grateful for the weather this week, yeah, y'all got it. If you've enjoyed your experience at the conference thus far, yes, okay. If you agree with Kanye West recent's Twitter rants, no takers? Okay, so you get the idea. That was a test and you all passed. All right, so I was really excited to be writing and thinking about these things. I just turned 31 this year. I voted, yeah, thank you. Most of the time you don't get snaps for that, so I appreciate it. Just turned 31. I voted the other day and I saw my age but beside my name for the first time. I was like, oh, bro, that's really me, yo. Like, that's crazy. But I'm excited. It's interesting being an older millennial. Like, I lived without the internet, without a computer in my house for the first 14 years of my life. Didn't have the internet till I was 14. My first internet was my mama's encyclopedias from college. So, you feel me? I know what it's like to actually look words up in the dictionary, pre-Google and everything. That was me. But I'm also... Thank you. But I'm also in this position where I can appreciate technology and what it does for us and really wrap my mind around how it makes our lives more efficient and effective. But one of the things I really wanted to talk about today was family. My grandmother recently turned 91 this year, and she's been battling a lot of health issues, and it's interesting to see the sort of strain it puts on my parents and how they feel in having to care for her and providing around-the-clock care, and the strain it puts on me as an only child who's older and becoming more aware of how these things influence the people I love. And so my pieces today are entitled Hands of Time. Very intentional with that. My grandmother actually made clocks when I was born, so she worked in a clock factory, and she's seen a lot. Great Depression, Jim Crow South, first to graduate high school in her family, went to segregated schools. She raised kids during the Civil Rights era and the Black Power era, saw World War II, had no right to vote, but in 2008, voted for a black president. So she's seen a lot. You can snap for that. Cool. She's seen a lot, and as she gets older, I want to make sure I put my questions in a meaningful order in a place so that I can ask them before it's too late. So the way this is going to work, I'm going to read an excerpt from the letter. I'm going to do a couple of poems in the middle, and then I'll conclude with the final excerpt from the letter. Is that cool? As we know our story. We know our power. Y'all was sleeping on me now. I'm going to do it one more time. As we know our story. We know our power. Awesome. Dear time, it's been a minute. Forgive me if I don't know how to begin. Forgive me if this stutter gets the best of me, if I sound like a broken vinyl or scratch CD repeatedly playing the same note. I am sorry. Forgive me for abandoning home rows and backspaces, for shifts in characters non-alphanumeric. They are, after all, expletives' clever disguise. Forgive me if the only words that come to mind are 4 letters long and fall short of God's grace. I swear, the bitter kiss of soap lingers on my lips. Grandma would like nothing more than to wash this foul mouth, cleanse it of any utterance other than the Lord's Prayer. I felt like a trespasser ever since I learned to read and write. As if language were off limits, like power belonged to someone else. Forgive me for playing with words like wooden blocks, haphazardly disassembled and strewn about the living room floor. Forgive me, because I know how much you hate that. Lately, I've been picking up books like toys, hoping to clean up the mess I've made. The mess I thought I made. I realize now that mess was not my own, but pieces of a broken history swept underneath your braided rug. Time. I must know who left this here to wither, to be forgotten, to rot in the shadows of faded memories. Time, my love, my friend, my God. What else are you hiding? Forgive me if I sound accusatory. If these questions unsettle the status quo, it is only because you taught me not to barter ugly truths for beautiful lies. You live in my reflection, in shades of brown, black, and blue. You are in the circles under bloodshot eyes, the rude awakening after too much sleep. I've seen you in the mirror, staring back, tucked between prom pimples and crow's feet, baby teeth and dentured smiles. I've seen you hiding in plain sight in a single strand of hair gone gray. You've taken residence in my body and made it your home, but I'm not complaining. I like what you've done with the place. Each day I look more like Dad, like Grandma, a blend of everyone I've ever loved. You've decorated me with wrinkles and veins and gangly limbs that span generations. You are an artist, the way you whittle nows into tomorrows, carve futures from our past, only to sculpt forevers with your bare hands. Time, you look good for your age. As we know our story. Hey, thank you. This table got it. I appreciate that. The poems and pieces and letters that I'll wrestle with today focus on family, loss, legacy, legacies of race and racism, home, age, and perspective. And this first piece goes into more of the physiological connections I've noticed between my past and my present, my family, and just how all of their images sort of collect in my body these days. And so this piece is entitled Heirloom. My mom is the nicest woman you will ever meet. Sweet. She greets everyone with a smile, everlasting like time. My mom has been in one fight in her entire life, and it was 1960-something, in a softball game. My mother, 3rd grade, made a tag at second base. And the frustrated base runner ran into my mother. She stood up, looked at her in the face, and said, "Get out of my way, you pug-nosed ape." My mama whooped her monkey ass. Her first fight was her last. Fast forward 40 years, and you'll see the resemblance in my own features. This nose is my inheritance. An heirloom, the very air I breathe. We wear it with pride. My mother would hover over me, hold me close. She'd touch my nose at the tip, giggling as we wiggled our joyous faces. The indigenous Inuit tribe, native to northern Alaska, defines this gesture as a kunuk, an intimate greeting between family members, loved ones. They'd press their noses against each other's near frozen exposed skin, cheek, nose, forehead, rub vigorously, and yes, sniff. It's no wonder I've always associated love with sense of smell. The sense that dwelled within my consciousness unlocked chakras, time hopping me back to my youth. I remember Brute, the $3 bottle of cologne, you know, it sold atop Food Lion's hollowed shelves. My pops gave me my first bottle when I was 12. And for those that are unaware, Brute smells like Satan's sweat on a sweltering September afternoon in hell. Yet I bathed in it, waded in its waters, offending all within my path, but it smelled like love because it was from my dad. I remember the smell of chitlins. Grandma's kitchen at Christmas, she was a chemist. The way she balanced the ratio of collard green to ham hock, she'd pop the oven, flail her arms like magic wands, wafting majestic aromas of cornbread and sweet potato pie, strong enough to knock you off your feet. It's as if my nose had teeth, tasting victory while feasting on death. I remember Papa's hospital room. Remnants of freeze-dried food and full bedpans. Love smelled like soiled linens and hospital gowns, antibacterial soap. Love smelled like diabetes and dialysis clinics. Love smells sadistic, like twisted irony. Did you know dialysis patients' symptoms include a loss of smell? As death's fragrance dangles precariously in the air, thick, heavy, unrelenting, perhaps he missed the scent of hope on our breath. Sweet prayers turn sour memories. These days, I lean a bit closer to the mirror, falling into my reflection, inspecting every crevice of a meticulously crafted face, searching for those I seldom see. And sure enough, I find them, living in the corners of my smile where Nile-like wrinkles form rivers in my skin. I see Grandma Hattie's jawline, minus the beard. I see my dad's curl pattern. I found him hanging out in that one strand of hair gone gray, Grandma Lizzie. She lives in the five folds alongside my eyelids when I smile real big. These are not crow's feet, but footprints in precious sand. And my nose, my nose. An olfactory manufactured by my mama. Now, I've been called my own set of names in my day. Pinocchio, Rudolph, you old wide-nosed having could probably smell the future. And my personal favorite, Nostradamus. Yes. Now, I'm no prophet, but my mama promised me we were royalty. Kings, queens, she'd squeeze my nose, cherish it like it fell from the Sphinx long before Napoleon's cannons made landfall, before European explorers ravaged borders, called us savage, and reimagined our phenotype inferior. With age, I've learned to love myself, seeing beauty where few dare to look. I take the time to smell the roses, knowing that I love you's lit between my own eyes, underneath my nose, all this time. Thank you. As we know our story? Yeah, y'all got it, Thank you. Cool, so that was Heirloom. It was really interesting, going through my family history, asking my mom about these stories I've heard when I was younger, and like, hey, can you tell me about the time you beat up that one girl in a softball game? Like, really, this project and this experience in putting this together has been extremely rewarding, and thinking about how we can continue to connect to our past. One of the things that I wanted to challenge you to do throughout the course of not just this session, but throughout the course of your experience here is take out a notepad, your notebook, write down words or phrases, just one word, one phrase that really resonates with you in each session, and craft a poem for yourself. I think one thing that I've learned to appreciate in my new, not old age, but I'm getting there. One thing I've learned to appreciate, though, is the power of reflection and how that allows us to connect with parts of ourselves that we didn't know existed or had forgotten existed for a long time because we choose not to acknowledge it. And so as you go through these sessions, write down those words, write down those phrases, create a poem for yourself, and next year it'll be you up here, spitting bars. That's writing poetry or reciting. Thank you. So the next piece, which kind of ties into Heirloom, but thinking more critically about legacies of race and racism and how that has evolved over time. One of the first times, as I got older, I became more mindful about the questions I was asking of myself and of society, because as a history buff, I was a history major in college, I was always curious about what my parents and grandparents' livelihoods were like during this era when folks were struggling for their rights in ways that they still struggle for today. And when my grandfather passed away in 1997, it was the first time I'd seen a 21-gun salute. I didn't know what that was. It was my first time really seeing a gun. And it was kind of freaked me out. Like, it was enough that my grandfather died and I saw his body, but the guns really threw me off in a lot of ways. And so this poem was my initial sort of interrogation of that. And it was the first time I realized my family's sort of military connection too, as a 9-year-old. And so I thought about what it meant to have a grandfather that served in World War II, to have a grandfather who stood up for a country that wouldn't stand up for him when he came back from his service. So this piece is entitled Old Glory, and Old Glory, as you may know, is also the name of our beloved flag. So I remember my grandfather's funeral. He was your usual vet from the world's second war, but he was fighting long before that. More, in fact, on his own soil, he toiled in fields, yielding dreams till he wielded rifles for our stars and stripes. Risking life and limb, he wound up lynched, left hanging from a New Deal with no repeal of oppression, just a poll tax, pat on the back, and a GI Bill. I'm afraid America failed him long before his kidneys. As a kid, me and my cousins would coax him out of his rocker, knock his knees and plead for him to play. We'd pop his suspenders, grin in his face, chase each other till our mothers told us to chill out. Don't you see Papa just wants rest? Yes, ma'am. I was 9. The day he died, I tried to dam the tears, damn the years he lived a life a second-class citizen, sharecropper turned soldier, overworked and underpaid, a glorified slave to the same flag they gave us the day they laid him to rest, pressed neatly, aptly creased into the form of a triangle, a two-sided story with a line from a poem to draw the connection, God bless America. Pledging allegiance reminds me of hazing, catering to the demands of our forefathers whose contradictory doctrine got us in this mess in the first place. My grandfather fought 2 wars. Scores of peers lay at his feet in puddles of blood and broken promises, but in that rocking chair, he was a monument, prominent as Lincoln, except he'd speak my name like I was heir to his throne, Donovan. Don't listen to your mama. I really miss those days. Those same hands that slain Nazis also rocked me to sleep, reached for rails on backs of buses as well as the stars and touched lives all in the process. So God bless Papa, but it was hard to talk over the 21 shots that popped so awkwardly into the afternoon sky, piercing clouds in their side, bleeding rain all over the bereaved. If you ask me, I believe a 21-gun salute is useless. You might as well flip him the bird. Why shoot the breeze for a man whose resolve can blow you away with a voice that beckons change? See, today I think about victims of war, morgues filled with rotting corpses, reeking of the American dream, a rancid odor sprayed over with Febreze. See, patriotism is pungent, and it doesn't come out unless you believe what you're fighting for. So, Lord, have mercy on our goals and those old souls who fought for a system that didn't give them a chance to be American. An exclusive fraternity that once dubbed me unworthy, yet encouraged me to recite the words to the Star-Spangled Banner verbatim. But I say them anyway for my grandfather, Robert Lee Hill, who still waves on a windy day every time I pass Old Glory. Thank you. Thank you. As we know our story? Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. Cool. Appreciate you, family. Yeah, so that poem was entitled Old Glory. Really, wrestling with race and growing up in the Jim Crow South, these are always questions that I always, wanted to know from my parents and wanted to know more about. And these were my bedtime stories growing up, right? Like, yes, we read Dr. Seuss, Cat in the Hat, and all of that, but I wanted to know more about their lived experiences, how they documented them, and I'm grateful for them, giving me a chance to use my voice to sort of communicate their stories in my own in a meaningful way. And I'd be remiss if I did not acknowledge that history and how it's played a role in my family. And I get into a little bit of that in the last excerpts of the letter. But before I get there, I have another piece entitled Still Moving. Now, in this I talk a lot about how over time our home, the concept of home sort of shifts and changes and evolves. As we age, we move to new places, we move to new corners of the world, we experience new things, whether it's studying abroad or living in another time zone. Really wrestling with what these things mean is important. And as I think about the power of reflection, this poem is sort of an amalgam of a lot of those things in my life and what it's meant to take my home with me everywhere I've gone. So as we move, as we use our bodies to move and communicate what it means to be human in this world, think about what stories you communicate and what good things about where you're from that you bring with you on a daily basis. So, the earth is the only thing that moves when it is standing still. Scientists believe the lithosphere, that is our planet's outermost layer, which is broken into tectonic plates, moves 2 to 4 inches every year. That is to say, right now, at this very moment, the earth is moving infinitesimally, restlessly pressing against itself as we desperately ask ourselves, where are we going? The theory of continental drift reminds me of home in magnets. No matter how far I go or how fast I leave, the forces of nature always seem to pull me back. I guess you could spend a lifetime running away from yourself, but the earth, like your past, will always catch up. I think of home, the way Harry Hess describes seafloor spreading and how new experiences push us towards our destiny. These seven seas, these oceans, they hug my body of land and rock me to sleep. These oceans, they taste like salt because they were made from our sweat, our tears, the years we spent fighting to exist. With clenched fists, we rose from 3/5 of a person to the 44th president of this country, yet we still lift our voices for justice just to realize that history, like the continents, always moves in circles. I'm back home, where it all began. Fossil records have proven that the same organisms that once roamed present-day South America also have traces in Africa, Australia, India. So if the earth is still moving, then I pray I Pangea my purpose, leave my mark, unearthing these roots, spreading my truth throughout my travels. I brought my neighborhood, my block, Fort Bragg, pawn shops. Y'all, I thought the world revolved around the Ville, and bruh, some days it still does. I remember we would hit the mall just to stunt. Couldn't afford clothes, but buying time, writing rhymes, bumping Foxy 99. Y'all, J. Cole is my personal Maya Angelou. Though he was no cage bird, I still scream cold world like it's the Pledge of Allegiance and mean it. I hear fairground fireworks, cicada serenades on summer nights, and the cascading melody of Bronco pride at homecoming. I still believe that one day I will go to the CIAA tournament and actually watch a basketball game. I wouldn't change a thing about where I'm from. That's why I take it with me everywhere I go. I love my home. And these fragments of memories, even the broken pieces of our lives, form a mosaic. So take your shattered remains and marvel at your beauty, your artful tectonic maneuvering. I love you, Fayetteville. And your constant contradictions, the marketplace where they auctioned our bodies and ratified the Constitution, the 2-6, where armed forces shoulder burdens of our country, Vietnam. The only place on the earth where street, nicknamed the Merc, can bring your dreams to life and resurrect a sense of self. Y'all, this is my home, and the peace of this place belongs to you. Our success is not calculated in the miles we've gone, but the lives we've moved. We are endowed with the seismic responsibility to be many earthquakes, reverberating about the globe, spreading the good of our human experience. Yet someone will take those pieces of you and only see your faults. But faults form mountains. And I never knew anyone that looked at Everest and called it a mistake. Your peak is up ahead. So whether you move or not, the world around you is shifting. So you better hit that ground running, lest the rug get pulled from beneath you, still moving. Awesome. As we know our story? Cool. So in conclusion, I want to leave time for questions and that sort of thing at the end. This is the last excerpt of the letter to my grandmother, which I hope to deliver to her in a timely fashion. But as you can see through these pieces, through these experiences, what I'm trying to do is ask all the questions that I possibly can. We live in a world that discourages questioning, that discourages you challenging the status quo. And I grew up in a family, in a situation, in a context that wouldn't allow me to just accept things as they are. If you see a need for change, you can be that. No matter how old you are, what you look like, or what neighborhood you come from, you can be that. And I want to make sure I'm using all of my time on this earth to continue to push people to be that change that they want to see in the world. So the last excerpt goes like this. Speaking of hope, Eduardo Bonilla Silva theorizes a racial utopia, a place in time where race no longer matter. However, his unresolved issues, especially the banality of ethnicity and the literal end of history, lead me to believe that such a future is neither possible nor desirable. Who are we if we lose touch with this past, our beautiful ongoing struggle to experience the fullness of humanity? Of course, we are more than formerly enslaved members of a diasporic community, and yet the most meaningful question I could ask you is, who am I without that struggle? Without this narrative of pain and progress, of chains and triumph, our story does not begin on a plantation in the sandhills of North Carolina, nor the turbulent tides along the Middle Passage. How then may we eliminate the legacy of racism without lessening its memory? How do we preserve that which we hope to destroy? Time, you are in many ways a healer and creator of wounds. How then can we account for such a balance in a world that insists we forget our past while it manifests itself each day? Forgive me for this metaphor in letter form. It is, after all, where I feel most human. Thank you, time, for always making me feel as such. Forgive me, though, if my timing was off, if I was too late. Forgive me, time. I am sorry for measuring you only in war and death in increments that don't account for those in-between spaces, those sweet moments between seconds when we feel most alive. You, after all, are no artifact, nor relic, but history incarnate, an amalgam of everything this world can hope to become. Your voice will always be Sunday hymns. I could hear you heralding hallelujahs from the choir stand, singing, "There's a leak in this old building, and my soul has got to move." Keep moving. And I'll be right there, behind you, beside you, building a life with the hands of time. And when it's done, this building, this house, this history will be where you dwell long after you are gone. Thank you for your time. Donovan. Thank you, family. Thank you, family. I appreciate that. So I want to open it up for questions in the time we have remaining, but thank you all so much.
Donovan, first I want to say thank you. I wasn't going to come today.
Oh.
And
I'm glad you did.
because I didn't have a car. I gave mine to my daughter. But this was important for me to come. So I used my GPS and I prayed for it and I received a ride. I'm thankful for everyone that is part of this symposium. I want to ask you, all your words touched my heart. I need to ask you, spending time at this symposium, you said to put some words together and create a poem. Amazing minds, gray hair advice, searching for truth about aging. As young as you are,
thank you.
You have touched my heart.
Appreciate
and
that.
I'm wondering what created this bond that you have with words.
Very good question. Well, thank you for your question. Thank you for all it took for you to get here today. Many snaps to you. Definitely appreciate that. It's a tough one. I think for me, so it was much trepidation at first. So I'm a huge hip hop fan, and a lot of what I do is rooted in rap music. And when I was like 5 or so, Soul Train would come on after Looney Tunes wrapped up. So, here I am eating my, Rice Krispie treats. I'm like, oh, what's this? And, I see, the rap, the dance, the, baggy clothes. I'm like, yo, this is dope. I want to, how can I do this for myself? And then, my parents would come in the room and turn off the TV really fast. So it was like a rebellious sort of connection. But it was in 95. I was being watched by some other caretakers one day in the summer. Their caretaker had an older son who was watching VH1 at the time. And Nas and Lauryn Hill's song, If I Ruled the World, came on. And I was like, bruh, this is the first time I ever conceptualized what if I ruled the world. It allowed me, it was my first sociologically mindful question. Wow, what does this mean? Me and this 8-year-old body, what can I do with that? And ever since that moment, I've been putting pen to paper and trying to find ways to make those images come to life. But thank you. Thank you for your question.
Touched by your pain. You expressed a lot of pain. I hope you were turned into joy.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And I think so. When what the brother mentioned was a lot of the things that came up in the poem or surfaced in the poem were painful memories. And for me, wrestling with it in poetry form is joy for me, and being on stage is a form of joy. I think for me, a lot of my poems, they take you through painful things. They are sometimes funny, they're sometimes sad, but at the end of the day, I want to instill a sense of hope, because there's hope in knowing your history. So that's where all of that comes from. But thank you for that observation. Yeah. Did you? Oh, right here.
Donovan, what do you see 5 years from now? Where are you going to be?
Oh, that's a good one. 5 years from now. 5 years from now, I'll be Dr. Livingston. So that's the goal. First and foremost, thank you. I have comps this summer, so hold your applause until I pass. But I'd like to be a professor in some way. A lot of my research focuses on the role of hip hop and spoken word poetry in college student experiences. So what role does hip hop and spoken word play in mediating that first year experience and helping students transition? I think for me, being able to have an outlet in undergrad to be able to wrestle with what I was going through poetically and lyrically really helped me reinvest in my college experience, because your boy struggled and stumbled out of the gate in undergrad, but that's a poem for another day. But it would be somewhere along those lines, being a professor focused in education and hip hop. Thank you.
Thank you, Donovan, for coming. I've truly enjoyed it. You have so much passion.
I appreciate it.
I want to know what have you been able to go into your community and speak to some of the younger kids?
Yes, ma'am. I do that every day. So in my role at Wake Forest, which Christina alluded to, I manage pre-college programs. So I design programming for high school students, either through leadership development, career exploration, community engagement. We actually have launched a program this year called College Launch for Leadership, and incorporates leadership development, career exploration, and social justice education. And students are identifying social injustices in their community and designing research studies around how to address those injustices. So I help lead them through that process.
So you see a lot of little Donovans coming up.
Well, my wife and I would hope so, but yeah. Yeah, oh, the other little ones. Yeah, I got you. My bad. Any other questions? Yes.
I had the pleasure of, I didn't see anybody speaking, of taking a course when I was an undergraduate at Wake Forest with Dr. Maya Angelou, and I just wondered if you had the pleasure of ever meeting her, because you remind me of her energy.
That is I am humbled that you would even make that comparison, and even to speak her name is an honor. So I met her in 1994 when my god sister graduated from Duke Divinity School. She gave the commencement address and had a little reception afterwards, and yeah, so I was like in her presence once, and I think at the time she was still like poet laureate of the first Clinton administration, so that was like super dope. Especially, you know, it was right before I started like writing and rapping for myself, but I knew there was like some poetry in there that I wanted to work out, so to be in her presence was pretty awesome. Yeah, at such a young age.
Donovan, you spoke of home, Fayetteville.
Yeah.
What are you doing in Fayetteville to work with the young people there?
And I appreciate your question. So that's something I wrestle with every day. I feel like, so I've lived in a couple places, New York and Boston and that sort of thing. It's always been important for me to do the work that I've learned elsewhere here in a place that matters to me, but I haven't gone back to Fayetteville, and I'm still trying to imagine what that looks like. And it's something in my age that I want to wrestle with, because I care about my community, I care about the state of North Carolina, but I really, really care about my hometown. And when I go back and when I do reinvest, I want it to be I want to be mindful and intentional about how I do that. So that is a weakness of mine that I would like to work on in the future. But thank you for challenging me to do that. Yeah.
I saw you when the author of Hidden Figures was over at Wake Forest.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah, Margot Lee Shetterly.
That was my first, experience of grace, to be in your presence.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that time, and
yes,
today you have a follower right here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. And before we wrap up, speaking of followers, if you do have social media, I am active on social media. My handle is at DLive87. That's at DLIVE87. That's the year I was born. But yeah, you're more than welcome to connect. I do follow back for those of you that are active online. But I think that's my time. Thank you all so much. Thank you. As we know our story, that's what's up. Thank y'all.